parents of identical twins. What was your honey, I switched the kids moment? So with very few answers, I'll answer this with a summer camp story. We were playing capture the flag, but the teams got to hide their flag. Well, each team in my game had a twin on each team, and the one on my team walked over to the other team's side and asked to be reminded where their flag was. He grabbed it and ran back before anyone noticed it was the wrong one. Adding my own summer camp story, I was a volunteer at a summer camp for 14-year-old when I was 18 or so. Imhorile with names, so I only knew the names the ones I talked the most with and who was in my group. End of the camp, one of the girls I didn't talk that much to came to say bye to me. Then her twin sister came up as well. I had no idea they were twins or that it was two of them up until that moment. My cousin has two sets of twins. They are 21 months apart. She can tell them all apart. They are all teen boys now, and damned if anybody else can. Not even their dad. The younger ones look like the older ones too, so that complicates things even more. It's like she and her spouse are running an illegal cloning operation out of their home. Good kids, all of them. They take advantage of their situations to hilarious levels. They love cosplaying stormtroopers at conventions and pull pranks at school a lot. I've asked my cousin how she knows. She says it's little details. A tiny freckle on one, shallower chin dimple on the other, slight change in voices, different clothing styles, etc. I'm glad she can keep it all straight. I could never. Identical twin here. When I was 4, we were at Disney World with all my cousins who are around the same age. I wandered off for just a minute, and my family took that time to move on to go somewhere else. When my mom was doing a head count, my brother moved, and she counted him twice, so it took them a few minutes to realize I was lost. Some nice stranger saw I was crying and noticed I was lost and helped look for my family. My dad eventually spotted me and hopped over a 7-foot fence to come get me. Security didn't like that very much, and they almost kicked him out. But everything worked out in the end. My mom is an identical twin, mirror twins. Her twin lives across the country, but when they get together they find it hilarious to get the same haircut, dress the same, and even record voicemails for each other. Her twin has a slightly stronger accent. There was nothing more frustrating as a teenager than coming home and lamenting to my mom and suddenly she goes, "I'm not your mom, ha 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 ha." When they were kids, they often swapped dates with each other, and my mom even tricked her twin's date into buying her chocolate, teddy bear and flowers on Valentine's Day. They also took tests for each other. Growing up, my grandmother would get confused because as infants and toddlers they'd always somehow end up in the same crib or bed and she would confuse who was who. To this day, they still have their own language from childhood and get feelings when the other is in emotional turmoil. Coached high school football for a few years, and there was identical twins on the team. During tour days, one of the boys was wearing a crop shirt under his shoulder pads, and I was able to notice he had a giant scar on his stomach from appendix surgery. Anyway, I was very excited because I thought this be the way I could start to distinguish between the kids. Turned out both of the boys had their appendix taken out, so I had to go back to the drawing board on that one. But by the end of the year I figured out which one was which. Mine are only 16 months old, but to us they look different. They have different head shapes. Normally a baby will settle in the pelvic bone leading up to birth. Well, they both can't do that, so one has a more round head, while the other's is more oval. So while they have the same features, their head shapes gives them each their own appearance. One has a faint birthmark on his left arm, so I will know if they ever try any tomfoolery or bamboozlement. I will say I verbally get them tossed around. Baby B has been climbing things and getting into mischief lately. Then all of a sudden baby A decided to do the exact same thing, so my default instinct was baby B don't. Baby A, you, stop that. Not a parent of twins, but I was in algebra with a boy who's a twin. As a newer kid I didn't realize he had a twin and I never saw them together. One day I borrowed a pencil from him during class. The next day, in class, I give it back. He was confused as fuck. I was confused as fuck as to why he was so damn confused, but he took the pencil anyways, then promptly walked over to his brother, who was in the same goddamn class, to return the stupid pencil. They sat next to one another. I was a dumb kid. I cringe to this day. Also when I was in the military I knew twin brothers who took a lot of offense to being mixed up. I sensed they didn't like one another. But their recruiter didn't care when both were sent to basic at the same time, in the same squadron for the same job. When they graduated I suppose someone else thought it was a shame to separate them, because they both went to the same base, worked side by side, and were fucking roommates. Felt kinda bad for them. Took all three to the park. I have boy/girl twins. Twin 1 had a big purple star on the back of her coat. Hood up, she was sliding down the twisty slide. I got distracted by the other two. I had had enough so scooped the kids up to go home. To my horror I had picked up the wrong kid. This other little girl had the same big purple star on her coat. She was the exact same size and everything. Hood up too. I only noticed when her dad yelled at me, "Oh, that my kid." No hard feelings, but a little embarrassing. I'm father of identical twin toddler boys and a 9-month-old, so think I feel qualified to answer this one. Since my wife feels it's so cute to dress them the same, until they will tell us they don't want to. This happens a lot more than one may think acceptable. There are some very small tells that I can find on each, like one has a slightly different head shape and another has a vein on his forehead in a more distinct pattern from the other. Still hard to tell in dim light. For the most part now I usually try to get them to turn themselves in, almost like a GD mind trick. For instance, when one gets in trouble and is looking guilty, pretty obvious for a 2-yo, I ask who did it, and he inevitably names first the baby, then the dogs, then his brother's name first, conveniently leaving out his own. I had a classmate that has a twin sister. One day me, her twin, her and her boyfriend, went from school by train. Classmate sat with her boyfriend, and I sat with her sister. Boyfriend had to use the toilet, and when he was gone, they got an idea. Apparently they never tried to switch to see if he would notice. So, they quickly switched some clothes. They were dressed similarly, changed their hairstyles, and switched the seats. When he came back, he looked at one, confused, then at the other, repeated the action several more times, then looked at his girlfriend, and was like, "Really?" while he started laughing. My younger brothers are identical twins. When they were in preschool they attended separate classrooms in an effort for them to have some independence and social skills. Fear was they would be twinning and not engage with other kids. Welp, one day they schemed and pulled a switcheroo. It took a bit of time for the teachers to notice that they had the wrong twin in their classroom. Actually, only one teacher did, lol. The teacher figured it out because the one twin wasn't playing with the usual kids and he couldn't spell his brother's name, only his. Edit. The only way to tell them apart is a freckle, otherwise, if you just see one twin at a time it's still difficult to tell who is who. Personality wise they are pretty different. I have identical twin boys, adults now. As a parent you really always do know who is who. But I did lose one once in a playground because I thought it was the same kid twice. They were about 4 years old, going up and down the slide. I was sitting on a park bench about 10 feet away reading a book, but still watching them. Suddenly, out of the corner of my eye I see one of them running towards the entrance, about 40 feet away. I was so confused. I had been watching one son going up and down the slide, thinking it was both of them. He was just doing it fast. It scared me so much I gave them 2 different haircuts the next week, so it couldn't happen again, which turned out to be a great thing, because now everyone could tell them apart. Except outside in the winter, because hats. My dad has an identical twin. Until I was about 4 years old they'd sometimes pretend to be the other to mess with me. After that age I could pretty easily tell them apart, but I couldn't, and still can't, really articulate how to do it to other people. It was just like it's easy. My uncle has a softer face. They have identical looking noses, cheekbones, jawlines, facial hair, etc. Neither is really noticeably fatter than the other or anything. Looking at them side by side there's not really anything that actually looks softer on my uncle's face than on my dad's face. But if I'm pressed to describe how to tell them apart that's the only way I can come up with to describe it. My mom and brother and sister and aunt and cousins all agree with that too. But if you try to objectively find what about his face is softer you can't do it. Obligatory not me post, but my aunt had identical twin boys. One Thanksgiving we were teasing them and her that they could very well be the wrong one. My aunt swore up and down that it never happened, and she knows for sure which one was which at all times. After the kids left, it was quiet for a minute, and my aunt took that big gulp of wine before saying, "Yay, totally possibly. I used to make one of their feet with a marker, and one day after a bath I couldn't find the mark anymore. Just don't have the heart to tell them." Much laughter ensued.